Birth rates everywhere are crashing, and they have been falling further almost every year since peaking in the 1960s. The fertility rate has plummeted about 60% since 1963, and it's just 2.2 births per woman today, barely above the 2.1 replacement level needed to maintain a population. This is driving rapid population aging worldwide. Japan now has over 29% of its population aged 65 or older. Italy follows at 24%, with almost all developed nations on a similar path. The economic fallout means shrinking labor forces and potential economies crashing. Projections suggest that by 2050, nearly 1 in 4 people in Europe and North America could be over the age of 65. Perhaps the biggest economic pressure directly impacting family formation is the global housing affordability crisis. Stable housing is foundational for families, yet it's increasingly unattainable. A strong negative correlation exists between housing unaffordability and fertility rates in developed nations. In numerous cities like Seoul, South Korea, Toronto, and Melbourne, rental costs can consume as much as 50% of a person's income, leaving little room for necessities or for savings. Meanwhile, house price to income ratios have surged. Hong Kong, it exceeds 20 times income. In Los Angeles, Vancouver, and Sydney, it's around 12. In New York, it's around 10 times income. This global housing crisis forces delays in starting families, sometimes indefinitely. Home ownership rates among young adults 25 to 34 have dropped significantly in countries like the US, UK, and Canada in recent decades, falling by as much as 10 to 20%. Addressing this crisis requires changing focus towards increasing supply and reducing construction costs. This means significant deregulation of overly restrictive zoning laws that mandate large, expensive single-family homes and instead encouraging a wider variety of houses, apartments, townhouses, duplexes that are inherently smaller and more affordable. We need to streamline the complex and lengthy permitting process, which can add literal years to build time and add substantial costs, sometimes up to 30%. Embracing construction methods like prefab housing and modular housing, which holds significant potential to lower building costs and accelerate delivery times. What's critical is that policymakers need to avoid the trap of focusing on the demand side of housing, such as giving grants to first-time homebuyers. While it might be politically popular, you're just throwing money at a problem where housing is too expensive. And it might help homebuyers initially, but throwing more money will only inflate housing prices and it will hurt future generations of homebuyers even more. True affordability comes from building more homes that are faster and cheaper to build. Studies in cities that have enacted significant zoning reform like Auckland, New Zealand, have shown measurable impacts on stabilizing or reducing rent increases compared to less reformed areas. Beyond housing, broader economic insecurity and high costs of having kids creates more obstacles. The erosion of stable employment with benefits, partly replaced by gig work, which involves over 70 million Americans now who lack basic financial security. It fosters financial vulnerability. And couple this with anxieties about automation and AI displacing jobs and decades of wage stagnation for so many workers since the 1970s. And the economic footing just feels really shaky right now. Add to this the staggering direct costs of raising a child, especially for childcare in the US, which can cost 20% of a family's income. And add on to that, just raising a kid to age 18 costs between $300,000 and $400,000. Wealth inequality makes the housing crisis so much worse. When wealth has become so concentrated where the top 1% owns about 31% of all the wealth in America, while the bottom 50% only have about 2.5%, we can see there is a clear, huge disparity. Residential real estate in desirable urban and suburban areas has increasingly become a favored asset for wealthy individuals, large corporations, and private equity firms. This influx of investor capital fundamentally alters the market dynamics. We have institutional investors deploying billions of dollars to buy up large portfolios of real estate. They can outbid any family, especially ones that need a mortgage. They're paying cash. They're driving up prices well beyond what local wage growth can sustain. And the data reveals this is not a minor trend. In recent years, investors accounted for nearly 25% of all U.S. home sales, including single-family homes in high-demand metro areas, specifically targeting starter homes for young families. This intense competition transforms housing from shelter, and it was also a main driver of wealth for the majority of people, and now it's just a financial asset traded by the wealthy. The resulting lack of affordable housing forces young adults to delay marriage and parenthood, and it contributes to decisions to have fewer children than they may have wanted. And it may lead to not having children altogether, creating a direct causal link between the concentration of wealth, housing inflation, and declining birth rates. This perceived unfairness, where essentially housing has become an investment tool for the wealthy, while the average citizen struggles, fuels a pessimism where now 74% of Americans feel that their child's life will be financially worse off than their own. But addressing these structural issues leads to a fundamental truth about human motivation. The thing about humans is that for them to actually want to have kids, you need them to feel that the world is becoming better, that the future holds promise. But this also means that housing must become cheaper with adequate family space. And that has to be achieved through deregulation and innovation. But also, governments must create laws to ensure corporations, private equity firms, and wealthy investors can't just buy up residential housing until the middle class is completely priced out of existence. Even achieving that, we must acknowledge deeper changes may be at play. Maybe huge cultural changes prioritizing individual fulfillment outside of traditional families are just irreversible. Many may just want to spend their resources on one or two children rather than spreading their energy and finances thinner. It's telling that virtually all developed nations outside of Israel have fertility rates below 1.8 children per woman. This is significantly under the replacement levels, and I don't think convincing everyone to become a Hasidic Jew is a practical solution. The fact that no country has even come close to solving this issue and trends are largely worsening, it just speaks to how complex this issue is. It intertwines economics, culture, and changing social norms in a way we don't fully comprehend. And about 2/3 of the global population now lives in countries with fertility rates below replacement level, and that number is increasing each year. But what we do know is that building a world built on stability and opportunity, where fundamental needs like affordable housing are met, is the only way the vast majority of people can choose to have children. If affordable housing is not available, most will not have kids if there is nowhere for those kids to live. But this is becoming increasingly more difficult worldwide, where global housing prices have increased 27% when adjusting for inflation since 2010. With advanced economies seeing even higher numbers, where prices have grown by 39% since 2010. People aspire to live good, successful lives. It's just that maybe the definition of success for many individuals in the developed world no longer means having multiple children. Success for some may not involve children at all. If that reflects a change in values, then perhaps there is no pathway back to that 2.1 replacement level for any developed country. However, striving to create a world where people can actually afford to live in, where raising a family isn't such a massive financial burden, at least that creates the option. This is one of the defining challenges of our time. What policies do you feel are most important for fertility rates to increase? Share your perspectives in the comments below. Next time, we'll discuss how falling fertility rates will change the world from a demographic perspective and what that means for our future. This has been Blinded by Logic. Thanks for watching.